Welcome back to Sprague or Homestead. So today we're going to be talking about the breeds of rabbits that make excellent pelts. Now for the last couple of years I've had several of you sending me messages asking me of the rabbit breeds that you can get, which ones make the best pelts. Well, all rabbits are going to pretty much come into 4 different categories when it comes to fur and pelts. You're going to be looking at your standard fur, which is either flyback or rollback fur. You've got your Rex, you've got your Satin, and then you've got stand-up fur. Now there are animals in each one of these 4 categories, and we'll kind of go through them and talk about which ones are the best ones for you to use. But just keep in mind that any rabbit, as long as it's been allowed to mature into a prime coat, can actually be used for pelts. So the first group we're going to talk about is your standard fur. As I mentioned, it falls into either a rollback or a flyback type fur. Now, basically, this doesn't mean a whole lot to anybody unless you're in the show world and you're really looking for a particular fur. But what this will tell you is a little bit about the length of fur. Usually a fur that rolls back when you run your hand through it is going to be a longer fur. Something that when you run your hand through immediately flies back to its original position is going to be a shorter fur. This might be important if you're really looking for a shaggier fur. Some breeds are far longer than others. But by and large, you're talking about a difference of maybe a 1/4 of an inch, all the way up to 1/2 an inch. So it's not a lot of difference. So in this category, the biggest thing is you're looking for white. And the reason that you're looking for white is for crafters or commercial entities. They can dye it to whatever color they want. They don't have to worry about shade variation, or any of that kind of stuff that you'll get either between older animals or just differences in a line of rabbits. For instance, I raise blue Harlequins, and my blue can vary from line to line. So when you're looking at commercial type stuff, you're really looking for whites. Now, in this category, you've got your heaviest hitters are going to be, of course, your New Zealand's and your Californians. For a smaller rabbit, you can also get into Florida whites if you're not looking for a huge size. You've also got some rare breed stuff that's definitely worth a look if you're trying to do some heritage stuff on top of it. Your Americans and your Beverins both have a slightly longer fur. Beverins, I believe, when they were developed overseas, were used as a fur animal. I know the Americans were here in the United States. You've also got the Blanc de Hoto, which is really a solid rabbit with kind of like black eyeliner around its eyes. You do have to watch these guys. They can get black spotting in other places. It's a DQ for them for show, but it is something that happens. So if you're going to look primarily for fur, I would stick with something that maybe doesn't have that as a possibility. Now, if you're going to be doing a lot of craft furs, crafters a lot of times don't care because they're not using a lot of fur in any one project. So when that happens, you can get into the other colors of New Zealand, like black, blue, red, or the brokens. There's all kinds of offshoot colors for New Zealand's as well. That I've seen steels, I've seen silver, I've seen all kinds of stuff. So you've got those. Of course, you've got Americans. You can get into a smaller rabbit like a lilac. There are all kinds of specialty type rabbits. In particular, the American sable makes a very nice pelt. The cinnamon, which was developed actually from New Zealand, that also makes a nice pelt. Any of your Argent breeds. So this is your Champagne, your Argent Brune, and your Cream d'Argent. Those are also going to be very good specialty type furs. People really like the different color in them. Harlequin is another one. We get a lot of people who contact me about Harlequins because they want to raise them for pelt rabbits because of the enormous difference that you can get in pelts. Another rare breed to consider there is going to be your Silver Martin. I don't see a whole lot of these, but they're really kind of a pretty rabbit. It's definitely one that you want to take a look at. Any of your chinchilla breeds. I would avoid the giant chinchilla, but your American chin and the much smaller standard chin both put out a really pretty pelt. There again, it's going to be a specialty fur because when you start getting into chinchilla, you get a lot of variation in the width of the bands in the hair. I looked online, couldn't find a good example of what that actually means, but if you raise chinchillas or have actually seen them in person, you'll notice that when you actually look at the hair shaft, it's banded. That's part of what makes that kind of salt and peppery look that's so very pretty. But it is very difficult to use in a commercial setting because of the variation in the banding. Okay, so next we're going to talk about the Rex fur. So Rex fur is pretty unique unto itself. So you have 3 breeds in Arba that actually do Rex. You've got Rex, Mini Rex, and the Velveteen Lop, which I don't think is ever going to get recognized at this point. But they all have that short, plushy type fur. They're also known as a Velveteen rabbit. There's some stuff overseas that they've been working on putting that same velveteen fur on a lot of different stuff. But there's only the 3 in North America that we're using, or in America. Of those, only the full-size standard type Rex is worth trying to do for a pelt. The other 2 are too small. It takes forever to get a really good pelt out of them. And because they're a very small rabbit, that means they're very thin-skinned. So it can be kind of a challenge to actually go ahead and tan out the hide. Now with your standard sized Rex, and I know Rex people are going to watch this and just cringe because I hate putting the word standard in front of it. But the full size Rex, you're looking at 16 different colors in the United States that are recognized. I've seen all kinds of stuff that isn't, including the tricolor. So you've got a lot of options there if you want to do Rex. Of course, once again, the most common color that you're going to see demanded in crafters is going to be white. The other color you're going to see a lot is black and the chocolate. Teddy bear people love these guys because of the soft velveteen type fur. So if you know of a crafter who actually makes, like hand makes teddy bears and stuffed rabbits from actual hide, these are the people you're going to want to talk to because they love that short velveteen fur, but they like it in very specific colors. For crafters, you know, anything goes. There are opals, there are brokens, there are tricolors, there's all kinds of colors in the Rex. So if you think you've got a good crafting market that is looking for that, you definitely want to take a look at raising the Rex. Okay, so our next one that we're going to talk about is Satins. If you've seen my other video, you know that these guys are very pretty rabbits, but I really don't like them. They have really poor personalities. But if you are looking for a pelt rabbit, they are very attractive to a lot of people. They have a translucent hair shaft that makes the fur very shiny. They're a beautiful rabbit to really look at. The thing that you're going to find is that in these guys, this is definitely going to be a crafter type specialty fur. So the white, from what I have been told by everybody that I talk to that breeds these things and actually tans hides for the pelt, because of the way the translucent hair shaft is made, they don't take dye very well. The whites tend to have an almost yellowish cast to the outside of the fur, especially once they've hit a senior age. So because they don't dye very well, because they're not a true white, there really is not probably ever going to be a good commercial application for these kind of guys. Remember what I'm saying, and the rest of them is in your different colors. Like if you decide you want to do all black, there's still going to be some variation a little bit. So you probably want to stick to these guys only if you yourself are going to tan them and you've got a good craft type market for them, because these aren't going to be a rabbit that a commercial entity is going to be able to buy, match up, and mass produce a product. There's just too much variation in the color. That said, the Satin makes a great multi-purpose animal. We'll talk about that again later, but these guys are one of the heavy hitters as far as meat producing breeds. So if you're going to do something that, you know, for meat and produce a nice byproduct, if you can find a market for it, the Satin is definitely one to look at. They do come in like 10 or 12 different colors. I know there's a lot of people working on some tricolored ones. You've got your brokens, your black, your blues, coppers, got all kinds of colors. I think there's 10 or 12 colors, like I said. So there's lots of variation there. So if you're doing the craft type markets, lots to look at. Okay, so the last one we're going to talk about is one of my personal favorites, and if I had all the room in the world, I might consider raising these guys, and that's the silver fox. Now, you probably saw our video a couple weeks ago with my friend Heather Keller talking about the silver fox and how its fur is unique unto itself. Now, fox fur stands up. It is the only ARBA recognized fur that actually will stand on its own. So when you run your hand through it, It stands up, and that's where it stays. People say, oh, you can write your name in it because it doesn't move. So the silver fox is unique because it was raised actually and created to be a replacement for the actual silver fox in the fur industry. Now, if you followed much of the news lately, you know that the fur industry is not going so well, especially in the United States. But also we're starting to see more pushback in Europe and some of these other countries as people deem animal pelts and fur to be inhumane. Now, from a homesteading standpoint, you know I probably don't agree with this, but there you have it. So if you're going to be doing anything on your own, the silver fox is definitely one to look at. You've got very few color options there because, like I said, you're looking at an animal that was bred specifically to mimic another. So the only recognized color in the United States is black. And of course, you'll have kind of those whitish, silverish, hairs in there. There's also chocolates and blues and brokens. I've seen white. Somebody not too long ago was telling me online they were working on a lilac. The black is the only one that really is very useful from a commercial standpoint because that is the color of the actual silver fox. The rest of those colors are pretty much going to be a specialty type color. Now, everyone that I've talked to could not tell me how these things take a dye. Now, being that they're mostly black, I don't know why you'd need to dye them unless you wanted to take the silvering out of them, which kind of seems a little strange to me, but I have no idea. So if you are looking to make a market and somebody says, I want to dye these things, I really don't know. And that includes the white variation when you can find them. I don't know what that does, if it makes any kind of difference to how the hair shaft kind of lays. So that's something you probably want to investigate a little bit more if you think you want to do like a white fox and then dye them. You'll have to do some research there because I really couldn't find anything for you, even after talking to several fox breeders. As Heather mentioned in that video, the other thing about silver fox is that it's a very, very heavy fur. Now, compared to everything else on our list, the silver fox, being that it was bred specifically for the fur market, does have a thicker skin and a heavier coat than anybody else in our list. So when you're looking at fur animals, it's definitely one to consider, but it's maybe not something you want to use for a lot of craft furs. Like I said before, craft furs, a lot of people are looking for things they can dye, things they can do stuff with, and fur that lays down a little bit flatter. Okay, so those are really your four main types of fur. I hope that kind of helps answer the question of what some of y'all were looking for as far as breeds that you can do pelt with. Okay, so when you're talking about doing these guys for fur, remember that what you're really looking for is a primed out coat, which is in most cases not going to happen until 7 to 8 months old. What you're looking for is a senior or at least a late intermediate type fur. This is not something you're going to find on babies that you're doing at 10 and 12 weeks to put in the freezer. At that age, the skin tends to be too thin. The coat still has too much baby down in it. It's just too open. And by open, I mean that there's just not good fur density, not good fur coverage. So it's not really something you can do a whole lot of. Now, if you've got a good craft market where you're at, you might find people that can use those if all you're doing is salt tanning just to make, some kind of ornament in the house. That might be fine. It'll kind of depend on what your market's looking for. But what you're really looking for in pelts, especially if you're looking for commercial pelts at all, is what's called a prime line. This is where the coat has gone through a molt, has come all the way through the molt, all the fur has grown back in, and it's a really fresh, really nice, really clean, really full coat in really good condition. And what you'll get is a prime line. And what I mean by that is when you sit the rabbit on a table looking away from you, you'll actually be able to see a line in the fur from the shoulder all the way down to the tail. It's the fur along the middle kind of folds in and kind of rolls back all the way down along the spine. Some breeds do this a little bit better than others. Silver fox, you don't really see it. I've heard that Rex can be difficult. Some lines will put out a prime line, some won't. And the longer the fur is, like the Beverins, from my understanding, it's harder to achieve that prime line just because the fur is so very long. But that's how you can really tell that a coat is in absolutely perfect condition to actually be removed from the animal and turned into a pelt. Now, I do want to take a minute and just kind of clarify my stance on this, because I'm sure I'm going to get beat up on YouTube, and I'm sure a lot of you are going to get comments that get deleted because of it. I am not advocating the use of growing animals strictly for fur. If you're going to do pelts and you're going to do fur animals, I have no problem with it if it's a byproduct or if the meat is the byproduct of the pelt. Because I know there are some people who raise them specifically to do Native American crafts, and they're raising them for the pelt, but they're also eating the animal and not letting it go to waste. I'm okay with this. I don't see anything wrong with raising an animal for its hide, for its pelt, as long as the rest of it's being utilized. I guess there it is. You've got to know going into this that there is pretty much no commercial market in the United States anymore for pelts. We have, of course, a lot of laws. I'm on the West Coast, and I watch what's happening in California. In particular, there's a lot of anti-fur legislation. A lot of the ARA groups are doing a fine job at shutting the fur industry in the United States completely down. And I say that kind of sarcastically because I think it's a waste. But anyway, it's very difficult. And as far as I know, there are no commercial buyers anymore in the United States. You might find, like I said, small groups of artisans that are willing to buy some. But you want to keep that in mind before you start a fur, fur program. Because nobody wants to be stuck with a whole bunch of them in the freezer or on your boards or whatever you're doing with them and find out that there's absolutely no market for them. So before you start doing it, do try and have a plan or strategy in place. The other reason there's really no market in the United States is, unfortunately, the commercial pelts that are bought in the United States are coming from China. And China sells them for dirt cheap. I have seen finished pelts go in some of the magazines online for $3 to $5 for a full-size New Zealand pelt in good condition. It's hard to compete with that. I mean, quite simply, by the time that we've actually tanned them and done something to them, we've got a lot more time and money into them. So you want to keep all that in mind. So that is kind of our overview of pelt animals, pelt rabbits. If you've got questions, leave them down in the comments. I'd be happy to get back to you. I know Kanan's going to go through it and put pictures of some of these rabbits through as we're talking about them. But like I said, pretty much any rabbit can be used for pelts. You're just making sure that it's going to be in a prime condition. And you probably want to steer away from any rabbit that finishes under about 7 pounds. The smaller the rabbit, the thinner the skin, and the more trouble you'll have with finishing. So that's it for today from Sprague Homestead. We will see you next time. Happy homesteading.